Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Howard, the editor of Community Rec Magazine. Thanks so much for taking the time to attend today's webinar. Today's presenter is Billy Draper, Principal Solutions Engineer at Salesforce, on the topic of how to invest or not in marketing and engagement in the COVID era. Today on our panel, we also have Derek Chan, the Engagement Specialist, Tara Scanlon, Principal Success Manager, Mary Wilder, Director of Research and Insights, and Brandon Bell, Engagement Specialist. If you have any questions during his talk, please send those over through the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll have time at the end of the webinar to answer them. At this time, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Tara.
Great, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining us today. And thank you for being a Salesforce customer. And welcome. We are absolutely delighted to be spending the next hour with you. Next slide. Before we get started, I do want to highlight the amazing strategic partnership that Salesforce has had with the YMCA. We have seen more than 1.5 million in philanthropic investment, including employee giving, company giving, and valued volunteer time. There's been over 24,000 donated volunteer hours, with just under 4,000 unique Salesforce volunteers. That's just over 10% of our US-based employees. It's safe to say that the Salesforce Ohana, or the Salesforce family, is incredibly passionate and enthusiastic about the mission of the Y. So thank you for everything you do in our communities. So what are we going to hear about today? We're going to hear a point of view on how Salesforce has adapted marketing and engagement in the COVID era. We're then going to hear about how to better understand where and how to make change. And then we're going to get some solution recommendations before we open it up to a panel discussion and Q&A. And before we dive in, we must review our forward-looking statement. Please make sure you make all your purchasing decisions on current features and functionality, not any forward-looking statements. And with that, I will pass it over to Mary to kick us off.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, I guess, depending where you are. So I'm just going to touch on a few trends and shifts that we've been seeing during the pandemic. I'll touch a little bit on how Salesforce is adapting, but really focus on what it means for organizations like yours. So I think there's been a shift in a few ways, some acceleration of trends we were already seeing, as well as a couple of new things. And, you know, for organizations, well, many organizations, ourselves included, but really for you guys, the marketing challenge I see right now is about maintaining engagement so that your community is there when your physical space reopens. And I'm going to touch on three things that I see playing a role in that. So first, you know, the shift to digital has only grown. With in-person interaction, or without in-person interactions, I mean, your entire relationship with your community is virtual. You know, for Salesforce, this has been changing our events. We're a pretty event marketing heavy organization. But for organizations like YMCAs, JCCs, et cetera, most of your community revolves around a physical space. And so one of the most important things about this shift is the ability to personalize your interactions with different segments of your community. So for example, you know, what you would send to a member who uses your gym might be different than someone who comes for childcare. And, you know, similarly, their needs at home right now are also different. And so thinking about how you could use email, social media, live streaming to connect with them in a way that adds value is really important. Another thing that makes that personalization and relevancy so critical right now is this trend we're seeing in digital fatigue. So for us, we've been thinking a lot about how we can shorten events or make things more digestible. But really what we've seen overall, I think kind of across the board during the pandemic is that, you know, our attention spans were short before, but they've really plummeted since March. You know, our interest in additional time on screens is dropping. I bet, you know, we can probably all say that our interest in a Zoom happy hour is probably lower than it was in March, or at least certainly my experience. So I would say just keep this in mind with how you engage with your community and really think about, you know, if you aren't adding value, are you just adding noise? And how can you really be a constructive part of someone's day? And then the last thing that I just want to touch on that I've seen come out of COVID that I think is really interesting and really promising is kind of a rehumanization of each other and organizations. So in many cases, working from home, we have a direct view into our coworkers' lives at home in a way that we never did before. And, the pressure to have this kind of perfect outward persona is dropping. I've seen this happening with companies too. People want to see and hear about how you're thinking through challenges around outfitting your spaces for COVID regulations. They want to hear that you're also struggling with remote learning with your kids. They want to know that you're trying your best just like they are. And I would encourage you to not shy away from openness and vulnerability with your communities and really bringing a human personal voice to your communications. It creates trust, it shows you're trying, and that you'll be there and ready for them in person, when you can't be. So all that's to say, in summary, just the three things are, digital tools are your friend. They can help you personalize your interactions. Be aware of digital fatigue, keep that in mind, and get creative with finding ways to add value. Try new things, iterate. Not everything will work, but people will appreciate the effort and you'll find some things that do. And then lastly, be open to sharing the challenges you're facing and the steps you're taking to be there for your community. It will not go unnoticed and will just help build that lasting relationship. So with that, I will pass it on.
Thank you very much, Mary. That was great. So there's some things I want to pull out as I walk through. I have about 600 slides. Just kidding. I have a few slides to share, not 600. Talking about fatigue. So yeah, I've got a couple slides I'm going to share, and really what Mary kind of introduced us to is this idea that shifting to digital and maybe being digital first, even, right? Those are the types of things that we're considering, and you start to think about that, and then there's a ton of questions that arise, right? So here we are. We've been in this COVID era of about 10 months or so, depending on when you started to count. And so there are a lot of questions that maybe still even remain today. Let's just walk through some of these, right? So where should we focus? Everything changes. The business model has to be adapted, maybe even completely reimagined. What do we do? Where should we focus and how should we change? Because we know there's a number of places we can and should, but where is the best place to do this, right? So the other thing is you start to say, well, how do we adapt our business model? How do we adapt to become more of a digital forward company, organization, services, products? What do we do to do this more effectively? Once again, kind of the same thing, right? You see these kind of building on a theme here, but what programs should we change? What happens next, right? What's the next thing we need to be prepared for? And then when is that going to happen? Maybe the reopening, right? The great reopening is going to be the next event. So what do we do to manage that effectively? How does it change volunteers, fundraising, membership? All that has changed, right? We know that has changed. And going back to what Mary said, we live in this attention economy right now, right? For the past 10 months, we've been sitting behind screens and everyone's trying to get our attention and tell us what they believe we need to know. And ideally, there's some things that we want to know, and understanding that about your constituents, right? That does help you personalize. That helps reduce some of that fatigue. So we think about how all this changed, and then what services do we continue to bring in-house? Do we bring services in-house? So potentially some of the attendees today, you had agency relationships. Maybe you can't afford that anymore, right? So what can you bring in-house via technology to help you do these things more effectively, more cost efficiently as well, right? So the big question is, all right, those questions still remain today, but where and how do we start? And maybe we've already gotten a start on this. So there's really kind of a three-step process. It kind of simplifies this. Now, there's a lot of complexity as you think about the 3 steps, but the first step is dig into data, right? A lot of times we're in this place where something happens and we just start to solution. I'm a solutions engineer. Like, I want to solve the problem immediately. I get that. But a lot of times we actually need to look at data to say, all right, we believe we have a starting point. We have a hypothesis on what we want to change, but let's look at the data. And maybe the data says that change is not as big as what we believe it needs to be. It actually might just be a nuance to something we're currently doing. So you have to dig into data to try to understand the spectrum of risk and opportunity. That's the idea. So when you think about doing this, there's a couple different things that you start to look at. And if you can start to combine that view of data, it really becomes much more valuable for you as an organization. So you have your constituent data, right? Your members, your non-members, the people that are in programs, the people, all those different things, right? My child used to go to YMCA daycare, right? So I understand there's a lot of different programs and services that you offer. So you need to look at your constituent data and kind of understand what you have there. Then you need to look at all your marketing data. This is digital, this is offline and online, right? These are all the different things that we're doing. Look at where you spend, how you spend, what's working, what's not working. And if it's hard to get those answers, that might be an indication when you think about what to invest in. I might need to invest in some tools that help me get the true answers of what's working in the market, right? And then you think about financial data and other data. So you really want to analyze all that data. You want to centralize and really deepen the understanding of those risks and opportunities. And then you start to see these benefits kind of fall out, or these insights actually fall out. So tier one, these are the high level things that we probably think of when we think about data, but like ROI, right? What's our return on investment when we do X, right? What's our return on ad spend when we put ads on Facebook or in Google or Twitter or LinkedIn? What does that look like? Can we do a cost benefit analysis? If we invest in these activities, is it worth our time? Retention, right? We start to think about, we had a bunch of members at the beginning of this. Some of them have fallen out. What can we do to maximize retention? Because we know, right, acquisition is 5 to 7 times more expensive than retention. So you need to really truly understand what you can do from a retention standpoint. And then you get to these tier 2 insights where you go, all right, now that we've got this information, what behaviors of our current constituents are kind of indicating churn, and how can we get ahead of that, right? Not spend money on a campaign to go acquire more people, but to get ahead of this churn moment. What are the characteristics of our best constituents, right? Lookalike modeling is very, very key, and you need data to say, all right, we have our best constituents. Let's go find more of them, because they mean dollar by dollar, they mean more to the organization than most constituents. So there's all this stuff to do when you think about digging into data. So that's kind of part one. Once you kind of get an understanding of the data, and if you realize you don't have an understanding of the data, once again, that might be a signal, say, I need to invest in a tool that allows me to truly understand data better. Then you start to think about identifying and prioritizing. This is where it gets kind of, you broaden the scope here. First of all, you have your big business objectives, right? And maybe there were a ton of them at the beginning of COVID, and right now in COVID era, the business objectives are retain our members and spend more efficiently, right? That might be it. But you know that there's value drivers within those objectives. So you're seeing things like maybe we do need to increase our acquisition, but at a smaller margin, right? Those are the types of things that we're trying to do. Maybe we do want to start to increase our conversion with these messages that we're putting out. So you have all your value drivers, you have all your use cases, the things that you're trying to do, and then you look at features. That could be technology, right? What features do we need to help us make this use case come to life? Being able to, as an example, understand churn before churn happens. So how can I send out an email in that moment, right? That's walking this backwards from feature all the way back to value driver and objectives. So you really have to have an understanding of that, and you start to circle in on the things that you believe you can do as an organization. Things that you can do today or things that you would like to do tomorrow. That helps us start to prioritize. This is kind of an example of what that might look like for you. Maybe you start with a 25% increase year-over-year membership growth. Maybe that's one of your key objectives, or maybe one of your goals. So what are your key objectives? What are your value drivers? What are the capabilities? Do you have those in-house today? Can you do those today, or can you not? Right? We're starting to find the risk and opportunity in what we can do in our current state. And so if you kind of follow one of these things through to pare this down, you can see that, as an example, I'm trying to create meaningful moments in real time. I'm trying to get a higher engagement rate so I can, connect and personalize messages. That could be very, very well be something that you want to do today. So as you think about understanding the problem, you have to identify what it is you want to do and get very specific it is about what you want to do. This allows you to go through and do the prioritization piece, right? Resources and budget are probably have trended downward, right, in this COVID era. So you really need to look at things that are high impact and probably low effort, right? Those are probably the key opportunities at this point in time. But you might also find something that's high impact and high effort, and it might mean more to the business to do that or invest there. So as we talk about this, this is the way to kind of unpack all the problems. It's kind of like, it's like that ball behind, it used to be that ball of cords behind your TV that's like, where does this go? Where does that go? This is unwinding that a little bit to figure out what connections you need to make the business go forward, right? To answer those questions that you have today still currently. The third piece of this, let me make sure I'm hitting the right button, and I did, is to develop that path forward, right? You have an understanding of what it is you want to change, why you want to change it, which is very, very important, how you might want to change it, but then you need to think about the path forward. So I'm just going to show you just a real quick example, right? I don't know if any of you on this call have a steering committee or have formed steering committees or advisory boards to say, what is it that we do next? But I would say this is a great process if you have a committee to say, this approach to it, and let's do the data exploration, let's do the identification and prioritization, and then let's think about what solutions we may need, and then we can start to talk about vendors, right? A lot of times we start with vendors and we work the other way around, but it really truly is doing this investigative work with your organization. And we'll talk about, if you haven't done this before, we are a resource to help you do that. There are people that can help you do that, organizations that can help you do that. So this is what something looks like, right? Start with the idea in mind, and work backwards and try to figure out what it is you need to do to get there. So this is really the three-step process. Dig into data, identify and prioritize, and then develop that path forward. If you have any questions, we'll go to the panel here in a bit and we'll talk about this in a little bit more. But hopefully this is very helpful. Hopefully it gives you some comfort around some of these questions you may have. Just as a side note, I did some pro bono work with the YMCA located here regionally with me. I walked them through this process, and we were able to find and identify some very specific things that we could do that were quick wins and some things that were longer term visionary projects. It worked out really well. So I do encourage you to take this and once again, look at this webinar. We can share the assets. But from there, I think it's now time to talk about solutions. And I'm going to go ahead and welcome in Mr. Derek Chan and Brandon Bell, and then I will continue to drive. So you guys let me know when you want me to go forward. But Derek, I believe you're going to open us up here.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Billy. So to kick things off around solution recommendations, just wanted to first state that these are designed to be broader themes in general. They don't necessarily have to be Salesforce specific, but obviously as we go into some of these slides, you will see some screenshots of the actual Salesforce product. So first of all, these are just general broader themes, and then secondly, all of these recommendations are designed to help you in this new COVID world, right? Where users are, everybody is having to do a lot more with less. So how can you use more automation, more intelligent decisioning to help aid in your marketing efforts? So first recommendation is around marketing intelligence. I think we're all pretty familiar with the power of dashboards and reports and ensuring that every stakeholder, whether they are an executive or a channel manager who manages perhaps just email or perhaps just ads, has all of the data and analytics that they need. And so having a centralized location where all online, all offline marketing data sits, tremendously valuable. B, you also have to understand where revenue is generated, right? I think that having that end conversion that's being tied to the actual campaigns is extremely instrumental, right? I think that there is absolutely a power in understanding clicks and opens, right? But then understanding actually renewals and membership conversions, right, is actually where the the full attribution is really what you're going after. C, having a dashboard that can help you understand ROI in a lot of different flavors, whether it is in total or in aggregate, by campaign, by channel, by creative, by audience, right? Being able to really have that different drill down so that every single user can understand the metrics and the ROI that is specific and important to them. Also just, how do you then surface up, right? Use intelligent decisioning and AI to help you identify risks and opportunities, right? So when we send out this campaign, are we getting real-time reporting and insights that tells us like, oh, you know what, perhaps this actually campaign has a higher risk and may not actually provide us with the conversions that we're actually looking for. Maybe let's pause that campaign, reallocate those dollars, which is more important and more difficult to even get these days, right, into a higher performing campaign. And then being able to spend effectively and efficiently and have AI automatically pause or promote those campaigns. Yeah, so within a single dashboard, can you actually understand what is getting you the value that you're looking for, and then can a system actually intelligently pause or promote different campaigns? All right, recommendation number 2 is around cross-channel market automation. This is really all about just meeting, your constituents, your customers where they want to be met, right? We know that there are some users who are heavy on email and like to have inbox 0, and will look through every single email and delete them and or archive them. And then there are other users who just, like me, I have, over 10,000, emails in my inbox, and there's just a lot of clutter there. However, I may be active on social, and so perhaps that's where the opportunity is to actually get an ad in front of me. So really, what this is really showing is this is just a journey of a potential user, and as you can see over here on the very left-hand side, there is an icon that actually shows a email. And so this is just a renewal offer, right? That could be automatically triggered 30 days before a membership is due. Then as we move forward, the renewal offer goes out, right? Then it's like, did they actually click on the offer? And then it goes through different paths and different journeys and different potentials. Next slide, please. What I wanted to call out was a couple different things that we have done to actually make this a lot easier. I think we're all pretty familiar with what cross market automation can look like from a journey perspective, right? If and or statements. If they do this, then they get that, right? But now we can add a little bit of automation and a little bit of intelligence into this. So Einstein STO, that actually stands for send time optimization. All this is really doing it. This is a drag and drop capability. You drag this little widget into the journey, and all this is saying is, hey, for each and every single user, they are going to get this email at the best time where they are most likely going to open it up. For some users, this could be Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. For other users, it could be Saturday night at 8 p.m. Right? And so how do we just get the best placement of that email at the best time? And that's literally drag and drop functionality to really help increase conversion rates. Engagement split, this is just another AI capability that just, hey, if they do this, then what are the different types of campaigns they should receive, right? So if they have actually opened this up, let's go ahead and send them this email. If they have not, let's go ahead and send them something else. And then ad campaigns, right? So as a user gets further along this journey and they have not renewed and they have not opened up emails, and perhaps we've sent 3 or 4 emails, but we have identified them as, hey, they actually have been a member for over 5 years. Odd that they're actually not, converting and they're not opening up emails. Maybe, they are a group of users that we want to put and spend a little ad dollars against. So let's go ahead and enter them into an automated ad campaign at a certain threshold at a later point in time in their journey. And then the last one, of course, right? All of this needs to be aligned with your marketing goals. So the great thing about any type of journey builder platform is that it should be optimized and it should have the end goal in mind, which in this use case is the actual membership renewal conversion. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Brandon.
Thank you, Derek. So I have the opportunity to speak about artificial intelligence and to kind of put this into context in the COVID world. Normally, if I was in the office, I would be spending time digging into reports and coming to my own conclusions and trying to look for patterns and things behind the scenes, right, that I can use as a marketer to be more effective in engaging with my constituents. But we're dealing with a pandemic. We don't have the time to do that. My kids need my help, right, in school. And, you know, there's other things that come up where it's pulling me away from the computer for hours, sometimes even days at a time, right? We're all dealing with that. So artificial intelligence is extremely important in the sense that it's able to do a lot of those things behind the scenes for us to make recommendations. It's going to look for some of those patterns. The first of which that I want to talk about is email click prediction. So, gosh, it would be nice if we had that ability to quickly understand which of our emails are probably going to see the most engagement based on factors like the content that we've sent before, or looking at people that have actually engaged before. Could we use those people as our muse, right, to send more content to more people like that? The other opportunity that we'd have with artificial intelligence would be looking at just the overall tone. And this is looking more specifically at things like subject lines and just understanding which of those emails, based on the way we're phrasing things and the way we're organizing certain phrases, are going to see the best engagement as well. And then the last piece that I want to touch on is forecasting, right? So if we're actually putting dollars behind, you know, some of our clicks and just trying to understand where we should be positioning our dollars to stretch further in this day and time, we're going to try to give you some insights around that as well, because the whole point of AI is giving us that backbone of where we can go and focus our attention, like Derek spoke about with those journeys. We'll have the insights now to know where to better focus our attention, what sort of content is going to work the best, so we don't have to guess. This is going off beyond things like A/B tests. Those are important, but this is actually looking at real data that we've already collected and allowing us to use that to our advantage. So just, of course, scratching the surface with that topic, but hopefully that inspired some questions. I think that's where we're moving to next is Q&A. So I'll open the floor here.
All right, thank you all. Checking in the question section, I currently don't see any questions at this time. I can open it up. Did you all have anything that you would like to elaborate on?
Well, I did just want to sum up really what we've heard, because we had a lot to unpack there. So we really heard marketing trends. It's a time to personalize those digital engagements. It is all about digital and content. Be mindful of noise. We talked about digital fatigue, and then that rehumanization that we're all feeling as we're all at home. When we want to think of a strategy perspective, it's digging into the data. Data is king these days. So what does our modeling look like? How can we get ahead of churn? Are we going to use our clean data for predictive intelligence, as Brandon mentioned? Are we going to identify and prioritize? That's that value mapping, prioritization, and then it's developing a path forward. So how are you going to leverage automation, potentially in journeys, or to make your job a little bit easier and to increase your efficiencies? And we're thinking about doing more with less, and that's really done with automation. So I think we heard a lot of really great tips, especially that we now know that Billy is one of our 10% of volunteers at Salesforce with the Wise. So I will open it up to one question to this group, because I know one thing that we've been seeing in the nonprofit trends is this move for our more mature or elder populations to become more digitally empowered. My father has 10 sisters, Some of them are in their late 80s and they just got on their iPads. They're trying to just get on Facebook Messenger to connect with us. And they're like 87, 89, and they never had a computer before. So we are seeing this shift of our more mature family members getting online. So I'd like to open it up to our panel here to get any thoughts, insights, advice, definitely don't do's, to try and engage that segment.
I think that's really well said and a great example. If you think about things like ordering groceries online to have them delivered to your house, there's a digital process, right, that you have to go through. And many people have been forced to adopt those digital processes. So this is kind of like that catalyst to say, this was a really, we weren't going to lead, we weren't going to change and revolutionize the digital engagement experience. It took something major, pretty major, to do that, right? So I do think that it is now not, it's more common than ever to take a digital first approach to these demographics, these audiences that maybe you were afraid to do something with in the past, right? Now they understand it, they get it. So I think it's not only having the ability to communicate digitally, it's also making sure that you align experiences that are very easy to understand. So, a lot of times when we send out an email, as an example, emails are this long and there's all this information. Maybe we don't have to do that anymore. Maybe it's just a little bit of this, and maybe it's a question we ask, and maybe that question kicks off an automated journey that helps the person on the other end have a much better member experience, right? Or a renewal experience. So it's those types of things to think about. And I do think this is that catalyst that we've all been waiting for, potentially, maybe not this exact one, but this is, the event that is causing more people to go digital, even membership-based organizations such as yourself, offering digital classes and exercise and fitness and those types of things. So that was my comment there.
I would also add, just to build off of Billy, that I don't see that going away when, the pandemic ends and things are, back to normal, so to speak. I think what we've experienced the past 10 months, to just, build off of his, was this catalyst to this, just new state of being that is only going to continue to evolve. So I don't think this is a temporary flash in the pan that, our grandparents or older parents are getting online and doing things more digitally, and that just sort of normal day-to-day things have gone that way. I think a lot of that will stay. And so it's important that, every organization be thinking about once, right now, but then as things kind of reopen again, how do we transition that to just be a core part of how we operate and not a temporary thing? And so that's where investing in tools can come into play, because right now, I've, like, from friends' experience, my own experience, different anecdotes, there was a lot of a make it work attitude. During the pandemic, it was like, we have to figure something out and we got to do it. It may not be perfect, but we're gonna, put things together, maybe some scotch tape and bubble gum, and that's cool. It works for now. It's great. Like, we're figuring it out. But that's not going to last forever. And so we need, as individuals, and every organization really needs to be thinking about, how do we put the infrastructure in place to be able to adapt to that state of being, for the long term. So just, some additional context.
The only other piece I wanted to add is I think it's such a good question, because if you asked each of the panelists here, for example, how we tend to communicate with different organizations, I think we'd all have a different answer. And I am thinking about my parents, who are in their mid-70s, and they're not usually on their email, right? And so I'm trying to think through, if I'm trying to engage with them, if I sent them a text message, like, that's such a easy way for them to engage. And I know the stats support that people will tend to respond to a text message quite quickly, and the engagement is that much higher than email. So it's right in front of you, it's on your phone, and it's removing some of those barriers for my parents and their demographic, where it's like, hey, we have something to speak with you about, tap this link, we can obviously make it much more pointed than that, but Just thinking through that data point that we could collect on my parents, we know probably don't need to take them through that email journey, and we could focus our efforts elsewhere. And I just wanted to knock down that myth that SMS is complicated or it can get really expensive. There's so many different ways that we can handle that and introduce that to your organization. So just wanted to call that out as well.
That's great. I've got two more quick questions for us. The first one that I will start with again is, Mary, you mentioned at the beginning, if you aren't adding value, you're just adding noise. How do you know you're adding noise? Like, what are the qualifying factors of creating value and engaging content? Because content is king right now. I've never consumed so much. So maybe, Mary, you can start, and if anybody else wants to add some color, like, what is value content and how do you avoid noise or even know that it's noise?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think a lot of it comes down to understanding your audience and your segments, and really knowing them and what they need. The two examples I used were someone who maybe comes to the Y for the gym, or someone who uses childcare or daycare. And those, while there may be overlap between those people, there may not always be, and those are two very distinct needs. And so someone who can't come in to use the gym, are you directing them towards online classes or fitness, at-home fitness tips or things like that, where the person who's using the childcare services, that may not land to them and they're not really interested in that, and that's just going to be one more email in their inbox that they feel overwhelmed by, not reading or waking up to and getting the full inbox. Whereas if you sent them things like easy recipes to make with your kids, or at home, here's an at-home art project using things you have in your kitchen, or something that recognizes, like, you're probably trying to navigate this at-home learning thing and it's tough, and here's a tool that we can give you to help. Not everyone's gonna like everything, and everyone's in different situations, but ultimately it comes down to recognizing what are those big segments, and what is a way that you can provide some information or a tool or a resource that aligns with that need, just in currently a different context, versus just sharing things. Like, I think an example of noise would just be something that's like, we're all coming up on New Year's, like, think about your New Year's resolution. Everyone's like, okay, I'm not coming back to a gym in person right now. 2020 was really hard. What do you really want me to do with this? So that might be a little bit more sort of in the noise category.
I think it comes down to this. We put up signals as constituents, right? There are signals, and the signals can be whether I click on a link in an email, or I don't click on a link in an email, or I don't open the email, because to your point, Mary, everyone's sending me New Year's, like, your New Year's resolution is due in a couple of days. Like, it's not, right? That's not how I'm operating currently. I would love to have the time to do that, but it's listening to signals and then saying, based on those signals, we had a starting point. We understood who we believe that you are. Like, let's just use the case. We knew you're a member. We know that you're a member, right? We know that you're this age group. We know that you like those classes. But what if I'm exploring your website? What if I'm clicking around? I'm giving you additional signals. What if I'm saying things on social, not directly at mentioning you, but talking about things that you could help me with, and we could create a value exchange, right? That's the idea, to say, what's the value exchange that we believe we have, but what's the value exchange we can build off these signals that constituents give us, so we can serve up the best experience and really say, we understand who you are. Rather than you discover us, we're discovering you, and we're telling you, and we're trying to help you. So those are the really, really interesting things, because there's so many more signals today than there were a while back, right?
Yeah, that's great. So, what we've heard is that Our elders, there's a lot of segments in our elders. They're going to stay online. They're going to stay digital. Some might be on SMS. Some might be on email. Some still might prefer that direct mail. So it's really important to learn and have that data-driven decision-making, specifically for our more mature and elder segmentation. And then when it comes to value and noise, it's really knowing who your constituents are or your prospective constituents are. So having that personalized connection is what I've heard, to make sure that it's relevant to them, and being able to learn from all the signals and the nuances that your constituents and prospective constituents are giving you. Kind of sounds a little bit like dating to me, but it's all the same. You know, we're trying to build relationships. So we don't have any questions in the question box that I can see. So I'd like to leave us with some final thoughts. And I'd like to open it up to all the people on the panel, including you, Brittany. And I'd like to ask, what are you guys hopeful for? We've been in this pandemic for 10 months. It looks like we're going through the tunnel and we can see the end. But what are you hopeful for as we enter into this next phase of the COVID era? And Derek, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to go first.
Sure. I am generally an optimist, and so I know that there has been a lot of change that we've all gone through through this experience. But I also think, in a positive way, I've also spent a lot more time at home, and I've also actually done a lot more things around my house. I've actually checked off a lot of house projects that have been on this piece of paper for many years. I think that I'm looking at this experience in trying to look at it in a positive way, right? Which is, I've actually been able to develop deeper relationship with some closer friends. I've been able to get a lot more housework done that I generally have put off for years. And I look forward to some of those, skills that I've learned throughout this experience. And so I know that there is a lot of change that has gone on, but some of it is also positive, and I'm looking forward to adopting some of those new skills and the new ways that I've viewed challenges and have overcome them.
Great, thank you. What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I think what I'm hopeful for and starting to see, I think someone referenced this earlier in the webinar, which is just more genuine and meaningful connection with persons, because I think of the question, hey, how are you doing today? That's actually a loaded question now, right? So we all have a story behind that question. And I'm learning how and what that means in my everyday life, both at work and outside of work, on just what it means to build community and real connections in a COVID world. So with that being said, I'm extremely hopeful with how I think people are starting to adjust to that, and how I'm trying to challenge myself in that way as well. So great question. Yeah.
Great. What about you, Mary?
Yeah, I would agree with both of those for sure. But something that's been exciting to see and that I look forward to seeing more of is just a lot of the creativity that I've seen from different organizations, whether it be nonprofit, a school, a business, a neighborhood, kind of coming together with creative problem solving and figuring out how to shift and change and just continue to support their community, whatever that may look like. And it's very cool to see people kind of coming together in different ways to figure things out and really kind of meet the moment. I know it sounds cliche, but I hope that some of that creativity and kind of openness to change stays, because I think there's a lot of really awesome things that have come out of this, and I don't want things to kind of stagnate and just pause, because it's been exciting.
Yeah, that's great. Hearing a lot of the whys out there. Community is something that we're all hopeful for. Billy, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways I look at this from a marketing perspective, from just straight business perspective. I hope that we now move forward, all organizations, with efficiency first as the true north. What can we do more efficiently and more effectively? Because I think a lot of times we get overindulgent. You see organizations do that a lot, and then you lose sight of what you're really there to do. So I just think that's like a big general theme that I hope we continue to do more of. From a philosophical standpoint, I think empathy is something that has now been exposed. Maybe we weren't as empathetic as a society, as organizations who, like YMCAs, are connected to the community. You're the leaders of empathy, right? I think that is really, really interesting to me. And there's this new concept, right? Digital empathy. How can we be leaders of these new thoughts that have formed in this pandemic and expose some of what we aren't as a society? So I feel like really hopeful that we will take that and hopefully not lose sight of that, and we will champion those kind of efforts. So that's it. And personally, I can't wait to get out and like just connect with people. I just face to face. I need it so bad, and I can't wait to like hang out with everyone and goof off for a little bit, right? So those are my kind of three buckets of what I'm looking forward to here.
Great. Thanks so much, Billy. And then Brittany, we'll pass it over to you. And Mitch, if you don't mind coming off mute, you can close us out with what you're hopeful for, and then take us home. So Brittany, do you mind sharing what you're hopeful for?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tara. Thanks for including me. I mean, honestly, I think the theme of, the year and kind of following what everybody has said is that word connection. And like, everybody's craving that connection, in person, digital, however you can get it. And so, from our perspective with Community Rec Magazine, our hope is we just want our industry to get back to doing what they do best. And we just want to keep being able to support them, just like you all, the best that we can. And so that's our hope, is just like adapt and connect.
Love it. Thank you. Mitch?
Yeah, thanks, Tara. So, I think the key word is hopeful, right? We've gone through a lot this past year, and things are hopefully starting to turn the corner. And personally, I have a family and a 10-year-old son. I'm hoping that he can get back to school and have that socialization, which is so important. I know the Y provides a lot of childcare services and things that keep kids engaged and keep the community engaged. And working with a lot of them on the professional side, I'm hopeful that they'll be in a better position next year to have some conversations about how they can re-engage that community, and how we can help and really have impact, because it's really the community. It's not the swim gym, daycare. There's so much more that YMCAs are delivering and that are so appreciated, and make a huge impact in the community. So I'm thankful for that, and hopeful that things will get better for all of us in the new year.
That's great. Thanks so much, everybody. And thanks everybody so much for your time. I can say I'm incredibly grateful for my Salesforce community and the Y community and all of our customers. You have brought so much joy to my 2020, and I look forward to all the amazing impact we'll be able to make as we transform for 2021. We do have a new YMCA landing page, so please do go and check that out. And if you have any further questions or comments, or you want to engage with us, please send all your emails to Mitch, and you can see that his email is there. And we will just follow up with our thank you slide. It's been great to spend the last 50 minutes with you, and I'm wishing you all a safe and happy holiday season if you are celebrating the holidays. And if not, I just send you positive vibes, and I look forward to connecting with you all again soon. So thank you all to my panelists and our collaborators. It's been great, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you all to our viewers. Thank you.